Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast. I'm so excited because we have our first in-person guest in this new incarnation expression of the show with us today. My dear friend, Dr. Nicole, is with us. Hello, good to have you.
Hello, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to just for everyone to be listening and for us to be able to share together today.
Beautiful. All right. So whether you're watching or listening, we are going to be diving into a really interesting conversation. So I thought Dr. Nicole would be the really beautiful first person to come on because of the work that she does specifically around making the invisible visible, because we all know when it comes to mental health challenges, a lot of times it can feel like we are waging this invisible battle that nobody can see, but holy damn, can we feel it? And I know I've had moments where I just wanted it to be visible so people could see how challenging it was or see the reality of what I was dealing with. And so actually in her beautiful work and in her practice and with her clients and students and in her research, Dr. Nicole is doing some really powerful work that's really going to give you some clarity and understanding around how we can make the shift in this conversation. And so let's start. I'm not going to read your bio because it's really impressive and there's all sorts of letters and this and that and accreditations and certifications and the million and one things. So if you want to dive into all of that with Dr. Nicole, go ahead and read her bio because it's incredible. But will you please take us, to the degree that you feel comfortable with, to a point in your journey where you had a moment where you realized, woof, this is challenging, this isn't working, or something that led you to do the work that you are doing today and that you're going to share with us today?
Yeah, it was August of 2022. I was laying in my bathtub at the end of a day, and I felt honestly like a failure as a mom, wife, business owner, as a human being. And I just kept on this loop in my mind. I kept saying, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. And I got out of the bathtub. I went and got my computer and I sent out an email. And that email said, Mobility Physical Therapy is closing. I do not know if we will ever open again. Here are 3 practitioners that I recommend you transitioning your care to. If you have any problems, please reach out. My team will be able to help you, and I will cover your cost for 30 days of transitioning. And I closed my business down. I honestly thought I would never work again, which a lot of us probably listening to this podcast, that you might be an overachiever too, and you might get a lot of self-worth, self-importance, but also just your life mission may be to help people. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to be able to know that at least one person's life had been changed because I had been in it. And so effectively cutting out something, I'd wanted to be a physical therapist since I was 10. So I closed down my business. I was done being a physical therapist. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had no idea if I would ever work again. And I didn't for 7 months. That was really the precipice of change for me, where everything that I do now was really solidified and created.
Wow. Well, thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. And I'm sure whether people can relate to that bathtub moment to that degree or just to some degree, many of us have experienced that moment. And I've certainly heard myself say those things to myself of, I can't keep doing this. I don't want to do it like this anymore. And so thank you for sharing that. And so as you begin to explore how to do this differently and go deeper with your work, obviously as a physical therapist, you're working very much with the physical form and the body. And at the core of that is our nervous system and how we move and how we feel. And so can we start there? Can we talk a little bit about what you have uncovered in your research and your practice around what's happening at the invisible level inside our body and why it's so important for us to understand this a little bit more at a, a layperson and at a, to a level where people are like, oh, I learned something, but not so that they're like, whoops, I guess I didn't get my degree today. I don't know what she's talking about. To the degree that the average person like myself can understand why it's important that biochemically, like i.e. what's happening inside our body, is really important for this conversation around mental health because of how it affects us, but also maybe can we talk a little bit about the stigma around like, oh, this is invisible, it's not that big of a thing, but you've uncovered that it is a big thing. So let's talk about how what's happening at the biochemical level being essential for this conversation and the depth of our each of us having this understanding.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. If you imagine right now that all of a sudden you started having dizzy spells. So you woke up and you're like, oh, I feel a little bit dizzy. And it went away and you would go back up throughout your day, but it kind of sits in the back of your mind. And then all of a sudden you move again and you're dizzy again. And then all of a sudden the dizzy spells start lasting longer and longer. What would you do? You would probably go to the doctor and you would probably expect that they would run some sort of test to ensure what was going on with you. Now, the really tragic and scary fact is that somewhere between 85 to 90% of every single doctor's visit has been tracked to be stress related. So, that mental health component, that mental wellness component. And yet, there are very few, if any, doctors that actually could tell you a test they can do to check your mental wellness and your mental health. Instead, they look at the symptoms and they say, that seems like anxiety, and they prescribe a medication. And I have nothing wrong with medications. There's times and places, and these are really important things that we might need. So this isn't a anti-medication conversation. This is a pro testing conversation. So, why are we not testing the chemicals of the brain? And people are like, well, I didn't even know a test existed. Well, there's lots of them. They're called neurotransmitter testing. And it's really where we can look at your serotonin, the chemical that more like happy chemical, your oxytocin, can you connect with other people? Your dopamine actually isn't a pleasure chemical. It's a I like to call it the I told you so chemical, because it gets boosted every time the brain thinks something's going to happen and then that thing happens. It's a predictability chemical. And so you can imagine if your dopamine is low, and yet you might be running around mentally saying, I can't do anything right. I can't do anything right. I can't do anything right. Well, your dopamine is the reason that you're saying that, because your dopamine is low. It's constantly thinking that I predict something and it doesn't happen. I predict something and it doesn't happen. And oftentimes in my business, I hear people say, I set goals, but I don't like to set them because I never can achieve them. I never get there. And then we look at their dopamine and their serotonin, and it's extremely low. And then these are also how you get those diagnoses of adrenal fatigue that integrative and functional medicine practitioners are getting. And it brings up a bigger conversation of biochemically, why are we not testing these things? And I'll be honest, I think one of the reasons is because it's easier for us as a society to say your mental wellness condition is a you problem. And if you think that too, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just lazy, or I just need to suck it up. I need to be more consistent. And there's not, or I'm always stressed. I'm just a stressed out person. I'm very type A. And no one's ever looked at their brain chemicals to know, like, is that actually my personality? Or do I have a brain chemical deficiency, or maybe like, hyperactive in some area that's actually causing that part of my personality to come out in order for me to survive in this world? It becomes a very different conversation and a much more empowering one.
Wow, that's huge because that's the thing I think most people don't even realize until I, learned from you via your social media. So props to you that there even were tests about this sort of thing because that's never been the case for me. Anytime I've gone to a practitioner, whether it's more naturopathic or traditional allopathic medicine, it's, we talk about the symptoms and then, yeah, here you go. Here's some medications that would work. I'm like, I just came in here like 20 minutes ago and you're going to have me walking out with a prescription, which I am not adverse to. And as I love that you said, it's a protesting conversation. And so there's a time and a place for medication for sure. But what we're looking at are mind and body tools to support people thriving beyond these challenges. And that's really what you're speaking to. What I'm hearing you say is an understanding a level of clarity that these tests are bringing, that it's maybe, it goes deeper than, oh, this is just who I am. Well, if it is what's happening inside your body and inside your nervous system, that's really important for us to be aware of. And so you spoke to some tests there as far as your neurotransmitter testing. You mentioned another one that's really interesting that I think is really relevant to this conversation, considering the focus of movement being mind medicine, movement being body medicine. One of the tests that you use is about spinal mobility, to determine how sensitive we are to stress and in relation to our mental wellness. So can you talk about that relationship between spinal mobility and mental wellness, please?
Yes, I would love to preface too that there research wise, there are actually several tests. So CO2 tolerance is one test that you can do in 2 minutes or less that will note your sensitivity to stress. And you don't need it's free. Like every test that I'm getting ready to talk about is free. Heart rate variability, you need a wearable, but it's a lot of people have them. So it's fairly easy access and it's free. And that tells you how healthy your nervous system is, specifically your vagus nerve, which we can dive into deeper if we want to. And then grip test score. You can go in, almost any physical therapist, occupational therapist, personal trainers, a lot of times have them. Grip test score also gives you your readiness. How ready are you for stress? And then the one that we're also talking about here is spinal mobility. So how flexible are the three parts of your spine? So we have your neck, we've got your mid back, that area in between your shoulder blades, and then your lower back. The reason that this is so essential, like as I learned this, I mean, obviously I have 51 certifications. I have a doctorate's degree. I'm obsessed with learning, obsessed with it. But I had never started putting all of the pieces together. But when my own mental health was a battle I was going through, all of a sudden, all the pieces started falling together. And I realized that as a physical therapist, I had access to training that other people needed that they didn't have yet. And so, first, let's talk about the neck. So, if you guys can imagine, when we go into fight or flight, our pupils actually change. Well, the reason that this is important is that the more restricted we are on our head and neck, the more we will actually fall into either dorsal vagal freeze mode or into fight or flight. And so research has shown when we lack that peripheral vision, when we lack good motion, turning your head side to side, chin down, or looking up, your brain says, I can't see the threats that are around me. We are at risk now. So if you've ever gotten in a car and you're like, man, my neck feels so stiff, and you go to drive and you can't like turn and look, or you're like, I can't actually turn and rotate to look behind me anymore, your brain is still having that same fear every moment that you're walking around, every moment that you're sitting at your desk. And so that became monumental to teach people. Then your mid back and your low back, that is where all of your nerves that create your sympathetic or your fight or flight system, that's where they come from. And so, if you don't have good spinal mobility there, if you're not moving well in your low back and your mid back, then those signals are getting distorted. And if those signals are getting distorted, then the way that you respond to stress is going to get distorted too. So that means maybe there really is a threat and you're actually not able to go into fight or flight the way that we would expect you to protect yourself. Or maybe there is no threat whatsoever, but because you're constantly tight and hunched, and I know we're on a podcast, but I'm rounding my shoulders, that reaction of staying like that is why our mid backs are so tight. It is a constant signal to your brain. I am under threat. I'm under threat. And a good way to think about this is if someone came up and punched you in the stomach, what would you do? You would hunch over, right? You would tuck your chin down, you would hunch over, you'd pull your arms in. If you've ever seen anybody that has a neurological injury, like a brain injury, stroke, this is what they'll do. And it's also what we do when we fall into bad posture. We also come into that, or a lot of people will sleep that way, all hunched over. You're just sending a signal that says, I'm not safe the entire time.
Well, I'm just going to put this right here that yoga for thousands of years has been talking about the importance of spinal mobility. Joseph Pilates said you're only as young as your spine is flexible, but Dr. Nicole is talking about from a realistic, hopefully really understandable level. And thank you for using, explanations that make sense to a lot of people, the impact of the way that we hold our body on our nervous system. And, many people have heard, I say it all the time, maybe you've heard it elsewhere, that statement that came out a few years ago about how sitting is the new smoking, and the correlation between the amount of sitting we do and, metabolic disease, cancer, diabetes, so many different things. But what we're talking about here is another reason why sitting, especially in weak posture, which we're explaining there, that contracted protected posture is so impactful for the quality of your life. And ultimately as well, the length of your life, but we won't go into that. But what you're talking about there kind of answers the next question that I had, was about why is it essential that self-care happens at the level of the nervous system? And you just explained why spinal mobility and the tests that you're using, and even just movements that we can do throughout the day, is so impactful for that because of what's getting activated by way of the vagus nerve. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's one of the core tenets of what you do and how you serve people, about how nervous system centered care is really the only solution and the true solution. So let's talk about that. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Oftentimes, all of us know, everyone, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't believe in some sort of self-care. Like, you're just not even here, like, if you don't believe in that. The problem that I've seen across many people is that they believe, though, that if they are still in fight or flight, right? And when I say fight or flight, that's the anxious feeling, or that's also the feeling of, like, if anybody's ever walked in the door at their house and immediately felt rage, like they're like, I'm just so angry and this stuff's on the floor. That's fight or flight. Or if you're feeling that dorsal vagal shutdown, those pieces, which are really, like, it could be functional freeze. I can do everything on my to-do list, but I don't feel connected to it. It's stuff that has to get done. So I'm just gonna wake up and do it, but there's no passion, there's no emotion behind it. It's just like blinders on, do the stuff. Or it can be the shame and the, like, more depressed down, getting in bed, covering up, not being able to move, not being able to socialize. So often people are having those experiences, and what they're saying to themselves is, I would feel better if I just had a more consistent self-care routine. If I was just more consistent with getting massages, if I was just more consistent with going to the gym, if I was just more consistent with eating better, then this would be better. That is partially true, but you're also gaslighting yourself. If you do not understand and no one is teaching you nervous system centered care, this is fairly new. Like polyvagal theory, a lot of this kind of stuff, we're talking the 90s. It hasn't been around forever. That it really shows us a more holistic plan. Is exercise important? Yes, but only as important as your nervous system can handle it. Like, if you can't handle exercise, then this is the people that are exercising and they can't lose any weight. Like, these are the people who have to exercise to go to sleep. You're just shoving yourself up in your nervous system till you get enough stress that your body just says, "Oh, screw it, I'll shut down." It's not healthy exercise. So if you're not focused on those things, that's why nervous system centered care is the only self-care plan that's actually going to work, that will actually stop the anxiety, the burnout, the cycles of exhaustion, and actually get you to the happy, healthy life that you want.
Well, that's a very powerful statement you made right there. And I think that's so important for us to recognize, because that's what we're here to do, right? The mind and body solutions and tools. And because we want to get to the root of it. We're not going to go out into the garden and just pick the roots out, pick off the little bits of the dandelions. If we want to make true change, we need to get down to the root. We need to get in there and excavate and, like, do the real important stuff. And what you're saying is that nervous system centered care is that. And that's really valuable. And that's, people understand that. And truly, and correct me if I'm wrong, from my opinion, that is the mind-body connection, is the nervous system. That is that communication highway. that is so important. And that's really what we're here to do and talk about. And so I think one thing that you mentioned there, and you spoke to it, and it's really important. And, ironically, we're doing this conversation digitally and people are listening to us on like fancy technology and all of that. And so we have this incredible aspect of our life that brings us together virtually and remotely and serves as an element of connection. Like we can see each other right now. I can see your facial expressions, etc. But I know that that's missing for a lot of people. And when it comes to true, deep, and lasting self-care, can you speak to that as far as something that you've seen to be really important and really valuable from a nervous system perspective?
So science-wise, we have a part of our nervous system called the social engagement center. And so the social engagement center is literally, this is also those neck movements. We are constantly looking at other people and our environments and assessing whether they're safe or not. We are literally taking in all the micro movements in their cheeks and their face and their nose and their ears, as well as the big gross movements that they're doing with their hands. And that's what tells us if they're safe to connect with or not. Now, if that nervous system, though, is in dorsal vagal, or if it's in fight or flight, our defensive responses already go up. And so our social engagement system starts to shut down. This is why community care is the most essential part of nervous system center care. That I don't know why tons of people are talking about the nervous system right now. No one is talking about that you can't, self care is also community care. You cannot just, this is not a hyper individualism thing. Like, you cannot just go into a silo and be like, okay, I'm going to heal myself. I'm going to break generational cycles. I'm going to show back up. You have to do this with friends. You have to do this with people like Megan. We have to hold hands, look at each other and feel safe with each other, have true, authentic relationships with each other in order for our nervous system to be regulated. And that part is very, very, very crucial. So a lot of people, again, are gaslighting themselves, saying consistency and saying, I have to do it on my own. But those two things will never get you to the goals that you want. It's just not even biologically possible.
And ideally, is that done in person? I mean, that's not going to be available for everybody. How do you feel about the level of benefit that comes when you do that digitally versus in person?
I think honestly, I've seen both work. So inside of my happiness cycle, our coaching academy, we have people from all over the world in there, and they're creating these really deep relationships. I think the number one thing that I've seen is authenticity and vulnerability. You have to say the truth. I mean, even in some of those calls, people will say, when you said that, I immediately was taken aback. And I really was like going inside myself and I had to evaluate. Those are hard things to say to someone. Or, oh, when you said that, like my feelings got hurt. What's going on with that? Can you help me walk through that? That's authenticity, not the people pleasing. It's just, here is me and my truth, the celebration of my truth, the mess of my truth. Will you accept me with both sides of that? And as long as you're getting that, it doesn't matter if it's a phone call, it doesn't matter if it's video chat or if it's in person. I do think there's an aspect of just getting out in nature, getting out in the earth, like, and being really a part of the world that we live in that's so crucial. And I think you can do that. Go take your computer outside. Go sit outside and connect with somebody, but while you're also connecting with the earth. And I think you will see that. I also do host in-person retreats. I go to in-person retreats because there's huge value in also looking at other people and really being with other people. That brings another layer of authenticity. So I think things happen faster, but it's not that it can't happen virtually, if that makes sense.
Totally, totally. I think that that accelerated energy coming from that one-on-one or group interaction definitely makes sense that it would happen faster. So thank you for that, because I know some people, and for me, I live out in the middle of the ocean, so it's really important that I'm able to serve and support people virtually. So I love that. And I love everything that we've been sharing here. And thank you for all of this. And so we have reached the portion of our episode today where we are going to take a power pause. So a power pause is literally like it sounds, pausing, dropping into that place of power within yourself so that you can reconnect to that. You can come back to yourself, come back to that state of yes energy, that vibrancy that is your true essence, that is the regulated system. So Dr. Nicole is actually going to lead our power pause today. And so will you please take it away? Tell us a little bit about what it's going to be and then take us through it, please.
Amazing. I'm going to do something that you guys have heard of a million times, but here's what you don't know about it is that in 2 minutes or less with balanced breath work, you can literally change your stress response and your biochemical response. So oftentimes people don't do breath work. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard of box breathing. I've heard of balanced breathing. Yet they don't do it because they think they need 10 minutes or they need a certain song or they need to be guided. But the truth is, you could be in a confrontational conversation. You can close your mouth, breathe in and out through your nose, and start counting, and you biochemically will change, and you will start to change that social engagement center so that you can hear and communicate better. And I don't want to teach you something fancy, and you think you need the fancy thing. You don't. You need the simple thing, and you need to do it regularly, and you'll begin to see those changes. So we are going to do a 4x4, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. Now, at the end of it, we are going to finish up with deep breaths in, and then we're going to hum our way out. Humming is a way to get that vagus nerve to really activate. So we're going to do just a few rounds of 4x4, and then we're going to finish with humming, and you guys are going to immediately feel the change. So first thing, go ahead and close your eyes as long as you're not driving, and check in with your body. Just do a quick scan up from your toes all the way through those hips, your spine, that mid back, your chest, neck, head, face, and just note anything with curiosity, not to change it, but anything that just feels like it wants some more attention. Now, I want you to begin. We're going to begin with just a big deep breath in with everybody. Big deep breath in, collective energy, big deep breath in through your nose, and then let it out through your nose or mouth, all the way out. And then I want you to breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4, out your nose, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, all through your nose, in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, in. We're just balancing our system, balancing our chemicals, and out, and in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, and in. Beginning to focus internally and out. Focus where your breath is on the inside. In, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. In, can you trace that breath in through your nose, down through your throat, into your lungs, and out of your lungs, out of your throat, and out of your nose. In, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. In on the inside of your body and out. One more, in, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. We're going to take a big deep breath in through your nose. Now, when you breathe out, what you're going to do is breathe out through your nose and you're going to hum like this. And then take another big deep breath in. And maybe change the way you hum. Change it up. Big deep breath in. Belly, ribs, chest, huge expansion. Relax those shoulders if they're tight. Give them a little roll and keep them relaxed as you hum out on the next one. Last one. Let's add one more thing. Big deep breath in. Relax those shoulders. As you hum out, I want you to turn your head to the left and to the right. So, beautiful. and then just blinking those eyes open and coming right back to now. It's actually impossible to have improper breathing mechanics and to keep your traps, these shoulder muscles tight if you turn your head. So humming, activating both sides of that vagus nerve at the same time that you're turning your head, you can't keep that tightness, that tension in your neck and shoulders anymore.
Wow, I love that. Thank you. That was such a beautiful way to drop in. And you experienced how quickly we made a shift, right? You just made a shift at the level of your nervous system and your neurochemicals. Oh my goodness, gold stars for you. So that is the power of a power pause. Thank you, Dr. Nicole, for leading us through that. So if you are watching this video on its own, this video is actually part of a full episode of the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast, where Dr. Nicole and I go much deeper into this conversation. So the link for that will be in the description of this Power Pause video. But if you happen to be listening to this podcast and you're thinking, I want to see what she's talking about, take me through it, Dr. Nicole, make sure to check out the link in the podcast description that will take you through the video so you can see it. If you're a visual learner like some of us are, that's a great way for you to have that experience. So make sure to check out the full experience in the description. And thank you so much, Dr. Nicole. Appreciate that. And now, as we wrap up our time together today, is there anything else, if you just have a little minute and you do a little scan, is there anything else when it comes to shifting our inner conversation? Because we know it starts within ourselves, and that's going to contribute to the whole of this conversation around mental health and navigating challenges of anxiety and depression and whatever else shows up for us. Is there anything else from your perspective, from your professional opinion, that would be really supportive for us to know in our hearts, right? Not know logically, because now we're learning about the nervous system and, oh, this is cool, I'm cool. But in your heart, is there anything else that would be something you wanted to kind of add and end our conversation with?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is two things. Your mental wellness is not a you problem. It is a nervous system problem. It is even society's problem. And that doesn't mean that you can't change it, but you have to change it with the proper protocols. And that really means continuing to feed into that nervous system centered care. Without it, you will continue to berate yourself and run around in circles of burnout and anxiety and constantly think that you're missing something. And that's what I mean when I say it's not a you problem. You aren't doing anything wrong to be in the state where you're at. And there are very simple fixes to continue to move forward. 5 minutes or less can literally change your entire state, your biochemical, your nervous system, how things are activating, and the way that you move through life. So keep it easy, keep it simple. When we're already burnt out and anxious, it's not a good place to move from adding big, complex things to your life. And I just want you to know that we're here and there's a lot of us that are coming to really be a part of this community care. And we're ready to listen to you. We're ready to hold space for you and be true and authentic together.
I love that. And that's, you highlight so many beautiful points throughout our time together, but really what you did there is because we can often tend to place a lot of blame and shame on ourselves. And so what we're learning here is how we're responding to stressful events and whether those are outside of us, inside of us, real, imagined. And so this is biologically hardwired, right? This system that we've got is amazing, but it's an older model, and it's updating and gradually, but through these power pauses, through these tools, we are making these updated shifts. And so we want to look at this with this lens of this compassionate curiosity, which we talk a lot about here, that you've so beautifully brought to the table of how we can begin to shift our relationship with this and really create community and conversation around all of these aspects. And so thank you for that. And so because I know people are going to want to connect with you and learn more and go deeper. Tell us a little bit about what you've got coming up and how people can get connected with you.
Amazing. Our coaching academy is opening up. So I'm really excited. This is our 8th cohort, which is just wild. And really inside of there, we are teaching this nervous system centered care. So if you are someone that you know that your life purpose, you're like, if I can just know at the end of the day or at the end of my life that I changed at least one person's life, then I know that I did my job. That is who this is for. This is for people who really want to be change makers. yet they're also running around, they're experiencing burnout and anxiety. And they're like, how do I change someone's life when I'm feeling this way and I don't know how to consistently show up? This will not only teach you the skills, but also give you tons of skills, nervous system centered care that you can immediately go and share with your family, share with your friends, share with your clients. I do not want to gatekeep this information, honestly. This is really learning how to operate your own body, your own biological system is a human right. And for some reason, we have literally hid all that information and piled a bunch of dirt on it. And people don't understand how to listen to their body, listen to their mind, and really step through processes that can support themselves and support those around them. And I know that that's what you want. If you want to be a change maker, you want deeper connections, and this is the perfect place to come. And you can come check out. I'm also doing a free workshop called the Body Blueprint. So 5-minute protocol to improve your stress, your anxiety, and your energy immediately. And so if that interests you, those links are there. The replays will be up, but you can join us live. If you happen to hear the show on lunch, we're going to be live the next day. And if not, you guys can catch the replays. Just go to the exact same link and anything on Instagram. You guys can follow me at Mobility Athletes on Instagram.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And all of those links will be in the show notes and in the description. So make sure to firstly take a little screenshot and tag us both on Instagram and let us know what landed for you. And then, of course, follow Dr. Nicole and check out all of those beautiful resources she just mentioned. And thank you so much. It's been super lovely chatting with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. And thank you for just continuing to be of service and sharing your gifts with the world and bringing others of us on the journey upwards with you.
Thank you. I received that. And you as well. You're doing such beautiful work and shifting people's understanding and giving them really practical and efficient tools. Because we like things that are fast and effective, don't we? In our Speedy Gonzalez world that we lived in. I want to hurry up and slow down and relax. Oh, the irony. We could talk about that another time. But oh, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast, giving you mind and body tools to thrive beyond anxiety and depression and really getting to the core of it, getting down to the root of it and giving you tools that actually work. No fluffy stuff here. We're all about that good stuff that, yes, it might be thousands of years old if we're talking about yoga, or maybe 1990s if we're talking about the polyvagal theory, but it's actually the same thing. Same thing. Same thing. But, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you already know that because you know, and so you're here. And thank you for being a seeker. Thank you for being here, and you matter, and you are beautiful and worthy and deserving and all of the magical things. And no more listening to what your mind says because it talks a lot of shit a lot of the time. So let's talk about it. Let's come back into the heart and that beautiful nervous system of yours and let it guide you and let it be from that place of truth and authenticity. And so thank you for being here. Reach out with any questions. Make sure to check out Dr. Nicole's links in the show notes. And if you happen to just be listening, go over and do the video with us. And there's also a bunch of other power pauses over there that'll be really supportive for you as well. So until next time, take good care. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.